Hey everybody, it's Josh Dorkin from BiggerPockets.com here with Mr. Joel Owens. Joel can be found on BiggerPockets.com at BiggerPockets.com/users/black belt. And yes, Joel is a black belt, a badass mofo. Joel's also a commercial real estate investor and broker. And I believe his company is All World Realty. Joel, what's up, man? Nice to have you for another interview here on BiggerPockets.
Yeah, it's good, man. Nice to be here.
All right, all right. So where are you located? You're in Georgia, right?
Yeah, I'm in Canton, Georgia. It's Cherokee County. It's about 40 minutes outside of Atlanta.
Okay. And you fancy yourself a commercial investor, huh?
Yeah. I don't really do the residential side much. I'm just all on the commercial side.
Fantastic. Well, you would be our first commercial interview, so I'm pretty excited about this. I think there's a lot of our users and a lot of our viewers who are going to find lots of interesting information today. Whenever they're watching, of course, being today. So let's talk a little bit about your background, how you got started in real estate, and how you got to where you are, what you're doing today.
Okay, I was originally licensed in 2004. For a while, just for a few years, I did the residential short sales before most people knew what they were.
Sure.
And then from that point, basically, a friend of mine had a coin laundromat that he had inherited from his mother who passed away. And a developer had been approaching him about a big commercial project. It was a 650,000 square foot mixed use development on about 25 acres. It was a real busy city corridor, about 50,000 cars per day. The 25 acres consisted of multiple parcels. Many of them old buildings from the 1950s and 60s, and they were using tax credit financing to offset their high purchase price acquisition costs to do the project. And basically, I went in and met the developer, negotiating on behalf of my friend, and basically the developer decided then to use me for all the other parcels to negotiate for him for the project from that point on.
Nice. So you're the master negotiator.
Yep, I do the assemblage part of it. Usually those big deals, from the time you negotiate the land contracts to the time that you actually grade the land and finish the build out of the project, it's typically about 4 to 5 years.
Gotcha. And you basically came into this naked. You had no idea what you were doing really prior to your buddy handing this over to you.
Yeah, fire and brimstone. Basically, I just went with it. I mean, I had owned. I knew a little bit about businesses. I've been in the restaurant industry before for about 10 years, and then I owned my own pizza place for about 3 years, and I sold it off, took a few years off, and then got into, real estate. So I did know a little bit about it, but basically, this developer over, the 2+ years of working that project, we would have meetings about every week or 2 weeks, and he basically helped me learn the whole process, went over spreadsheets and how much the financing was going to be and acquisition target pricing and everything else. And he basically had been in the business for about 35 years, working for Developers Diversified Realty, which is a giant REIT. And basically he would go in and they basically go in and buy up companies that are basically dying or that they can turn around, and they, he did that for so many years, and then after a while he didn't want to do that anymore. It's a very cutthroat business and it kind of wears you down. Mm-hmm. So he got out of that and just went to developing more of the small time projects as a consultant.
Gotcha. So fueled by the fire, you're doing this and you liked it, right? You decided, oh, this is interesting. What next?
Yeah. But I mean, before when I did the residential stuff, when I had my own restaurant, when employees would, I'd go on vacation and the sales would start going down, and they didn't care like I did because they weren't making the money. They'd make minimum wage. So, the hours were very long. I wanted to, just get away from that. And I got into real estate, and I started, everybody said start residential. I did that. but it was just weekends and nights and trying to go to listing appointment and dogs humping your leg or something, you know.
Is there a story in there somewhere, Joel?
Yeah, with crying kids and everything. So, you know, I did a little bit of that, and then I did the short sales on the residential side, and the people would call me umpteen million times saying my car is going to get repossessed. What is the foreclosure date?
Right.
You know, call me with all their problems, and I was just like, this is just not for me.
Yeah.
And you know, when I got to the development side, I was like, man, I love this. I love the hours.
Yeah.
And it's just a natural fit for me.
A little more professional. Yeah.
Yeah. You deal. What I love about the commercial side is you're not really dealing with emotions. You're dealing with you know, assets, portfolios, people's cash, and you know, the numbers of the deal.
Right. Okay. So eventually, you wound up becoming a commercial real estate broker.
Right. I got my broker's license in 2007. I opened my own company at that point.
Okay, and that would be this All World Realty that
Yes.
we plugged before, and we'll plug again All World Realty. Joel Owens, check it out. So you opened your shop, and you've been running that for the past 4 years.
Yes.
Okay, and at some point there was a transition from just brokering these deals to actually acquiring your own commercial properties as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I just started acquiring my own properties this year. I was basically kind of looking for the right scenario to come along. You know, basically, after I did that land development deal, basically when the market kind of changed, a lot of the cities and the counties ran out of financing money to help the developers offset their costs.
Okay.
With tax credit financing and bond financing, most of the tax collection on the tax assessment is from the schools, and basically the city and the counties were borrowing that money to fund other projects, fire, police, developers, things like that. And once that money kind of dried up and the economy started going down, a lot of those projects started dying. So, you know, anything with a land listing, unless it was a foreclosure and being sold 40 cents on the dollar, or an investor can hold that land for 4 or 5 years, no one's really buying the land.
Yeah.
You know, so I had accumulated, you know, a bunch of development land listings after doing that project, and none of them were really selling because the sellers just wanted to hold out for the market returning in 4 or 5 years. So I started looking around and said, what's selling? And then that's when I saw that, you know, getting stuff at 60% of replacement cost that's already cash flowing, it's already built. That's where all the transactions were happening. That's where the money was occurring. So that's what I pursued a couple of years ago.
So what did your first provided you're willing to share that, what did your first deal look like?
As far as my own property that I bought? Yeah, that was actually that was this year. That was just a few months ago.
Okay.
Basically, it's a 20-unit apartment complex. It's 5 quadruplexes, 4 units. They're all on the same street. It's in Roswell, Georgia, which is one of the most affluent cities in the state of Georgia for income and schools and everything else.
Sure.
They're older apartment buildings. They're about 30 years old. But with this deal, I negotiated a owner finance deal where I didn't have to bring any money down.
That's pretty nice.
Yeah, I mean, I had to bring a little money down. When we closed, I had to do half for the escrow and for the taxes and insurance.
Sure.
Where they pay their mortgage company. That was maybe $1,400, and then I paid $2,500 for a title policy.
Wow.
That's all that I paid, and the sales price is $1,450,000. And what I did was, I have the seller. What I did is I basically wrapped the underlying mortgage, and we signed the documents. You know, that possibly at some point in the future the lender could call the loan, yada yada yada.
Sure.
But it's not going to happen. But you know, we just have to sign those documents. And you know, if I was putting a lot of money down in the deal, an owner finance deal, then maybe there'd be a risk there. But since I wasn't putting very much money into the deal, there wasn't that much risk on it from my side.
Right.
And then basically I have it set with a 2-year balloon note with another year option on it, and then I can, it's amortized over 30 years, and I got it set at 5.3% interest fixed. And basically I've got a credit from the seller at the time upon refinance where I cash them out, where they're going to give me a $150,000 cash credit.
Interesting.
So I bought it at $1,450,000. They're going to give me, 150, and then I put 150 with it, and then I'll be basically an 80% loan to value.
What was the seller's motivation for unloading the property?
Their motivation basically was that they'd been landlording for about 10 years, and when they started out, they were in their 30s, and now they were in their late 40s. They lived a few hours away from the property, and they were just a tired landlord.
Yeah.
And basically, their kids were going into high school and college, and they wanted to spend more time with the family before they didn't see them as much, instead of dealing with problems all day long.
So now they're note investors, and you're the commercial guy.
Yeah, and it kind of helps them, when they're carrying that paper, they can kind of still write it off on their taxes.
Right.
I actually, one of the people that sold her husband is actually a tax accountant.
Oh.
He goes around the world dealing with corporate clients and things like that. So, for them, it's a good fit. I didn't even mention this. I also in this deal negotiated that new roofs were put on the buildings.
Yeah.
And the seller paid for that. I didn't pay for that.
Wow.
And also, I got 3 months free debt service.
Wow, they were desperate, huh? They wanted out.
Yeah. It's kind of. They've been letting it go back and forth a little bit with their tenants, and the tenants have kind of worn down. And I basically came in and I did 8 evictions out of the 20 units, and I filed the dispossessory action on them, and then from that time they have 7 days to respond. If they don't respond, I can just go ahead and get the writ. If they do respond, we go to court, and basically the judge won't even listen to all their song and dance. They'll just put it in my favor, and then I'll do the writ anyway, or they'll have to pay the money.
Right.
But basically, that's what I've been doing. That's what I was there all day today. I've basically been cleaning up the place. There's a couple of units that needed reconditioning and turning around. There's a couple of plumbing clogs and little electrical stuff like that. But if this property was down in Atlanta, there's no way I would have done the deal. That area down there is real rough. People steal stuff the next day. Yeah. There's real rough streets down there. There's actually one street called Gun Alley Drive, if you can believe it, in Atlanta. And
it's descriptive, right?
Yeah. I mean, you don't even see the cops going down those streets. I mean, it's just real rough area. But Roswell, these are older buildings. But if you look on an aerial map, my background in land development, I'll look at the aerial map, and in a high-density area like Roswell, most of everything's been redeveloped in the last 5 or 10 years. The shopping centers have been refaced and made new again. Yeah. They built new apartment buildings. So where my properties sit, there's about 23 4-unit buildings that sit on about 15 acres, and I own 5 of those, and some other investors own some other ones.
Right.
But any developer coming in, it's maybe 3/4 of a mile away from Highway 400, which is our main interstate that runs into Atlanta, and it's next to shopping and everything else. It's just centrally located. So a developer came in there before and offered to buy them out about 4 years ago at $420,000 a building. With assistance from the city of Alpharetta, but at that time, that's when the city and the county's tax digest started going down, and they started running out of money to help fund projects. So I see the project coming back, a developer going to buy out those buildings in maybe about 4 to 5 years.
Gotcha. All right, so Sounds interesting. Sounds like it'll be a fun project to turn around, and I think it'd be cool to, whether it be on BiggerPockets on a blog there, or the forums, or maybe we do another interview down the line and we can talk about, you know, the success of this turnaround project for you. But I'd love to get into a little bit about um, commercial real estate in general, particularly for somebody who might be considering getting into that space. Um, if if I came to you and I said, "Hey, Joel, you know, I hear you're the, you know, commercial real estate broker. You know, I'm really interested in getting into commercial investing. What, you know, how would you advise me? What, you know, should I start with multifamily? Should I go to, you know, office? What, you know, what do you think would be a good um, first phase investment for somebody like that?"
I think it depends on, you know, what type of investor are you? Is this, you have a full-time job and you make 100 or 150,000 a year and you're just trying to put some income somewhere? Maybe you're a doctor or a lawyer, and you're just trying to shelter your income with a tax shelter, basically. Your returns that you're looking at are going to be different than maybe an investor that's more hands-on, that's wanting to put their cash in and do maybe a value-add deal with a hard money loan and turn a property around and do a higher cap rate or an increase on what they're going to get. Yeah. So it just depends. Right now, really, I mainly focus on multifamily and retail.
Yeah.
That's where most of my experience is. You have industrial and office and hotels and gas stations and restaurants and on and on. Yeah. You even have business, you know, businesses where you're just buying the business and the assets, but not the physical building itself.
Okay. Okay. So you focus retail, multifamily. If I'm looking at retail or multifamily, you know, I mean, they're two different dogs, right? One, you're dealing with, you know, people's homes. Another, you're dealing with their businesses, their livelihood, right?
Yeah, it's all about returns. For instance, if you want to place your money in a secure investment, you can buy a CVS, Walgreens, Rite Aid, something like that. Basically, they're on triple net leases. The grocery store or the you know, drugstores, grocery drugstores, they basically want to sell the property to someone, basically to free up capital so they can expand their business.
Okay.
And then basically they sign a triple net lease where they're paying for the, you know, taxes, insurance, and upkeep of the building.
Right.
So basically you do nothing but get money in your mailbox.
Yeah.
And that cap rate usually runs from about, right now it's running about 6.75% to maybe about 8.25%. You know, the downside to that is typically you can't raise the lease rates as much. They usually sign maybe a 25 or a 35-year lease.
Are they really that long? No kidding.
Yeah, and they go up maybe every 5 years.
Okay.
And see, if inflation's rising a lot, your margins can decrease for that payment. But, you know, for some people, you know, actually the people that I did that owner finance deal on, that sounds appealing to them because, you know, when you first start out, you don't have much money. You want to try to drive the hardest returns you can.
Right.
Then as you move on in life, you go more from, you know, wealth creation to wealth preservation. Basically, you have a bunch of money. You want to put it in something secure, and you just want to outpace basically inflation to keep your money growing.
Sure. So other triple net lease type investments in retail might include what? I mean, you know, can somebody go and find, you know, any business who's looking to
yeah, there's banks do it, restaurants do it, a lot of businesses, you know, do it because it frees up their capital.
Right.
where they can go put it into the growth of the business. They can go from, growing 10 locations to growing 100 locations, or maybe they want to enter the Georgia market and free up some money. So on some of them where they're carrying loans, they decide to convert it into a lease, free up that capital, and then use that to build out more locations.
So you'd say it sounds like the triple net lease is probably the best hands-off, so to speak, type of commercial investment that you could potentially make.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you want to go for quality graded rated national tenants.
Yeah.
I mean, for instance, Walgreens, is $1 billion company.
Right, they're not going anywhere.
You're going to get that
unless they are.
Mom and pop. Yeah, a mom and pop is, there's a lot more risk there.
Right.
Or if it's a new franchise starting out, a new concept, and they might grow huge, they might not.
Right.
There's just more risk there that they might go on.
What would you say in terms of like a scale of risk? Again, and since your expertise is in both the retail and the multifamily, what would be kind of next on the scale downward in terms of least risk?
You can get like maybe a small strip center that's newer.
Okay.
And you can have a mix of credit-rated national tenants and then mom-and-pop tenants within that strip center.
Yeah.
To kind of mitigate your risk.
What do returns, what do cap rates look like on properties like that? I mean, I kind of a standard, if there is such a thing.
Maybe you can maybe get a 9% cap rate. It really depends on how old the building is.
Okay.
It all comes down to the location and how much money you have. If you have a bunch of cash where you can, like I'll just give you for instance, what's happening a lot in the retail space is leases that were done about 4 or 5 years ago at the height of the markets. You would have maybe do you guys have Publix up there? Publix shopping
I've heard
centers?
of Publix. That's a grocery store, right? It's like
right.
Kroger, yeah.
Right. It is considered a grocery anchored shopping center. Okay. Those usually generate high traffic, so the businesses like to be next to the anchor because they do a lot of money. But typically those come with higher per square foot lease rates of maybe $24, $25 a square foot. But what's happened in the last 4 or 5 years is the small little strip center down the road, say a little bit off the corner, was maybe $17 a square foot versus a $23. And now that their lease is coming due now, they've gone to the landlord and said, hey, give us a reduction in rent. Times are hard. Sales are down. Give us a $12 a square foot or $11 a square foot rate, or we're going to now move up to the Publix that was $23 a square foot, and now they've reduced down to maybe 18 or 17.
Mm-hmm.
So when you buy one of these properties, you got to be real careful, not on what the actual income is today, but really analyze those leases and see if a bunch of them are coming up for renewal or fixing to end, because it'll adjust to today's lower market per square foot rates.
That makes sense. That's a great tip. Boy, man, I got so many questions in my head that are just plowing through, and I'm sure anybody watching is just thinking that the gears are spinning here. But we're starting to tweak on time, so let me hit you with a couple more quick ones, and we'll wrap it up and come back and try it again another time.
Okay.
Tell me, let's go back to multifamily. So 5 or more units, we'd be considering these. What's it? 5 or 4? I don't know.
Five or more is considered commercial.
Yeah. So 5 more units. We're talking a commercial multifamily. What type of economies of scale are we starting to see? The guy who goes and buys a duplex or a triplex or a quad, jumping from that to say a 10 or a 20 unit property, what's the advantage? What's the disadvantage?
Well, just like houses, it's all, in one location. What I like about it is it's easier to control the quality of your product and affecting values. For instance, if you're in an area where you've got a quadruplex or triplex, more often than not, you might be around other different investors that own other buildings there, and they may or may not keep up their buildings as good as you do.
That's a good point.
You might have shared trash where one week one of the landlords pays for trash and the next week the other one does, and they don't keep up with the payments, so the trash builds up everywhere, or the streets deteriorate, and you get one investor that wants to pay the expense for the new street, and then you have the other ones that are basically slumlords, and they basically don't want to spend money on anything, and that can drive the value of your project down. So by having one building in one location, you control that whole development.
That's a great point. So you're eliminating the risk, at least a lot of the risk of lease rates and condition and being affected by outsiders.
Correct.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that's a great point. What would you say on your multis and the multis that you've seen? What do you think are the typical paths to add value? What are the average guys who are coming in to scooping up a property that might be like the one that you've acquired just now with tenants that need to be tossed or vacancies and things like that? What are the typical what's the typical path? And I know there's no actual typical path, but what's the typical path for investors to go into these properties and increase rents, and as a result increase the value of the property as a whole?
It depends on what type of property you're going after. These have had high occupancy for a while, and they just have a little bit of a deferred maintenance. Typically, the deals that I see a lot of investors going for is they want to acquire a property that's maybe 50 or 60 units. They can put some cash in, get a hard money lender to finance the repairs, a commercial hard money lender, and then basically get the occupancy up and fix all the problems. And then basically after 6 months to a year, refinance out that money to go after other properties.
Gotcha.
And basically how it works in the commercial space is everybody wants to leverage their cash. So when the commercial side, say I have $1 million cash, I'm not really interested in a bank loan putting 30 or 35% down, because then I can only do maybe about 3 deals.
Right.
If I go into a property where the seller will hold a 10% second, I put 10% down, and that lender will let me hold an 80% loan to value, and the interest rate might not be 5%, but it might be 7% or 7.1% for the term of the loan. Mm-hmm. That's worth it to me to pay an extra 1 or 2% interest, because now I can pursue 10 deals for that same $1 million instead of 3 deals. Gotcha. And then after each of those properties I acquire, as I fix them up, they're going to be even cash flowing even more, and I can just keep growing that and refinancing out and rolling it into more and more deals.
So these guys aren't typically flipping these commercial properties. They're buying, holding, and then leveraging their capital out of the property based on the new valuations and putting it towards.
They can flip them, but you'd be better just 1031 exchanging.
Yeah.
Into bigger and bigger properties. I have different investors of all sizes. One bought a 60 unit in February of this year, and for them they usually buy 200 or 300 units at a time. But they're up in New York, and they want to just come in the Atlanta market, and so for them, buying a 60 unit was dipping their toe in the water. Whereas someone else, that might be a big building that they're purchasing.
Right. Wow.
So it's just all relative. The biggest size properties, investors usually go after is maybe up to about 200 units. Anything above that, 300, 400, 500 units, you're basically getting into institutional buyers and REITs and insurance companies and stuff like that. And they're buying at such a low cap rate, it doesn't make sense for most investors who are trying to do value add deals. Basically, with the REITs and the pension companies, they're just trying to invest that money to keep up with inflation. If it does a little bit more inflation, they're happy. But for someone trying to create wealth, those kind of returns, they just don't cut it.
It's better than sitting on cash, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, listen, fascinating stuff. Really, lots of really interesting tidbits. I've learned a lot. I'm assuming others have as well. Why don't you tell us quickly a little bit about your business, how people can get in touch with you? Well, on BiggerPockets, again, it's Joel Owens. It's biggerpockets.com/users/blackbelt. And
yeah,
you don't want to get into a fight with this guy,
third
right?
degree, and I'm going for my fourth degree coming up in February of 2012.
And now we all know how you win your negotiations, right? You got somebody in a headlock, or busted.
Yeah, I just got their wrist twisted up until they say yes, and then get them to sign with the other hand. Yeah.
Nice. But tell us about your company. How else can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, it's All World Realty. My main website is www.gacommercialbroker.com. And then my apartment website is www.apartmentinvestingatlanta.com.
Excellent.
And I'm fixing to do a third website, which I've already registered it, which is buydrugstores.com,
Nice.
where I'm going to have a lot of the Walgreens, CVS's, and Rite Aids, that I'm going to be listing coming on the market. So I've got a bunch of different websites that I do.
You on you a Twitter man or?
I've got an account there. I really haven't messed with it that much. I'm not the type that tells everybody I'm going to the bathroom every second or something. So it's
you've been reading my Twitter feed, huh?
Yeah. It's okay. I do Twitter, and I've got all the social networking sites, and the videos, and I'm starting to do more of that. And but the two main websites is where they can find me, and it's just my name, Joel Owens at Comcast.net. They can just email me or call me with any questions that they have. A lot of out-of-state investors have been contacting me and or out of the country, and I'm hadn't explained kind of how cap rates work. I do want to throw this one blurb in real quick, is that a lot of people in California or a lot of those speculation type states, when people buying on speculation, you're not going to really get the cap rates that you're looking for. Atlanta is, you can get very strong cap rates here and really good cash flow compared to the other speculation states. Our state doesn't jump up and down in speculation like some of the other states. We might be, plus or minus 5 or 10% in value instead of, going up 40% in value and down 30 or 40% in value.
This segment paid for by the state of Georgia. So, no, that's great. And of course, Joel likes to hang out and play with us over at BP, the BiggerPockets website. So that's always a fantastic place to go. Ask him questions, find him educating and schooling the rest of us. Well, listen, Joel, it's been a pleasure, and hopefully we can continue the dialogue. I've really enjoyed talking with you, and look forward to getting this up for everybody to watch.
All right, man. Cool. We'll do the part 2. Now go into land development and go into the multifamily and retail to dig a little deeper.
Absolutely. All right, Joel. Talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks. See you later, Josh.
BiggerPockets.com